Hello and welcome to this edition of Face Off on France 24. Today we will be talking about the raft of suicides at France Telecom, the French telecommunications giant. Since February 2008, 24 employees of the company have taken their lives. 8 of them since the summer, and the last one just a couple of days ago when a 51-year-old employee jumped off a highway bridge. Many of those tragic incidents have been linked to work-related issues. First and foremost, the management's pressure on its employees to be more productive, and especially its policy to move people inside the company and across the country. To make things worse, the head of the company, Didier Lombard, spoke a few weeks ago of a suicide fashion, infuriating unions and workers. He has since apologized, but the damage is done. To discuss the issue today, I'm joined by Didier Hott, a spokesperson for the union Force Ouvrière. Hello.
Hello.
Across the aisle today is Christopher Mesnou, who is a corporate lawyer. So, Mr. Hott, let me ask you a very simple question. Is France Telecom pushing its workers towards the brink?
According to us, yes. Definitely the answer is yes. Last 2 years, Mr. Didier Lombard has implemented a policy called Time to Move, in English, in a French firm. Time to Move means shuffling the executives, workers of France Telecom every 3 years, but shuffling not in the same job. It could be in different jobs. So they have a pressure to move from technical job to commercial jobs, and a pressure about the results. And of course, it's a change of culture for most of the workers inside that firm, because 75% of the workers in France Telecom are in fact civil servants, still working in the company before she was privatized 10 years ago. So of course, we don't say that the responsibility is for Mr. Didier Lombard, but at least it's a problem of management in the company that is really annoying for the workers, because they don't have the possibility to see what will be their future, their individual future in the company.
Right. Mr. Mesnou, let me ask you, is France Telecom a special case? I mean, is 24 suicides for a company that has a little over 100,000 workers a big deal? I mean, is this the only company in France that faces such a tragic situation?
No, I think we all know that there have been other examples recently, including in the French automobile industry, where there have been a number of suicides. The specificity of France Telecom, I agree with you, comes from the fact that 10 years ago it was a public company owned by the state. There's been an increasing or a decreasing level of participation by the French state. There's been a significant mutation of employees from one service to another, and there's been a radical change in the culture, in the way in which France Telecom is governed. And that's clearly destabilized a lot of people. Having said this, I think we both have to recognize that 24 suicides is a horrific number of suicides, but that leaves over 100,000 people who have not taken this extreme measure. So what is it about these 24 persons that push them to the brink, and the others who are living in the same culture have not, fortunately, taken that extreme measure?
So what do you think has pushed those people towards the brink?
Well, I think, in fact, the management of France Telecom didn't realize how bad the situation was. And for instance, one of the top managers of France Telecom, not Didier Lombard, but another one, said recently, "I regret nothing." He was talking about the management system in France Telecom, but everybody understood in the meeting where he said that he regret nothing about the suicides. So of course, it's a way to get mad when you listen to such things, because your colleagues are taking their own lives just because of the stress of the work. You want to discuss this in proper meetings and just talk about how to improve the situation, how to cope with it. And the answer is, I regret nothing. Of course, it's mistalking, but anyway, there are times when you must be very careful when you are a top manager about the words. They have a meaning. You know, there have been recently, not in France Telecom, but in the French social discussion, talks, and that reached to an agreement about the stress at work. So, for instance, my colleagues in Force Ouvrière have asked the management to translate that agreement into the company social policy. And it's very difficult. They are now going to reach discussion, but in fact, we have the feeling that the first preoccupation for the company management is trying to improve the commercial results, trying to improve the shareholders' results.
Just for our viewers, France Telecom has a special status in France. It was partially privatized, so the state has a 26% stake. Today, 2/3 of its 102,000 employees are civil servants, which means, in theory, they cannot be fired. Many of them probably want to enjoy retirement benefits, and so they maybe prefer to cling to their jobs at all costs. So, Mr. Mesnou, is this a factor explaining why the management, unable to fire people, is trying to shift them around and maybe encourage them to leave on their own?
Yeah, I think perversely the fact that these people, those who have the status of civil servant, they cannot be fired in theory. So what is management trying to do? It's certainly trying to maximize the utility of each employee who cannot otherwise be fired. So shifting them from one service to another, from one part of France to another, even if those people are overqualified for their new positions, is a way of trying to maximize human resources, which is probably not the best way of going about it. So I think the intention is good to protect people's jobs. The way in which it's being executed may not be appropriate, and it may be producing these perverse effects which we're talking about now.
Mr. Rao, do you agree that the hybrid status of France Telecom is playing a part in this tragic situation?
Certainly, because in fact, the France Telecom culture was that of a public service. And all the workers were proud to have built a firm that, in fact, was a leader in its own market. And suddenly, their cheerful change of jobs, they have a pressure constantly to improve their result, but they have too a pressure to jump off the firm. For instance, the management at the beginning of the privatization of France Telecom had created a special structure that was in fact in charge of finding job to the civil servant working in France Telecom to go in the administration. And during that time, they were in fact unoccupied. And it is a way to put pressure on people. You just put them in an office, you don't give them work, and they are obliged to wait until the possibility to find another job in the administration. Well, it's a way to, in fact, to despise the people, to say you are worth nothing, in fact, because you are a civil servant, because you come from the public services. Didier Lombard tried to move that way because he saw that human resources had to be utilized in a way or another. But it was a real stress at the beginning of the privatization. And I think, in fact, the suicides are the translation of that stress during years and years that now comes to an end. And sincerely, the government must do something about that. I think the management is now not really qualified to improve things. I don't ask for the head of Didier Lombard. That's not my problem.
Why not?
Simply because it's the management that has to be changed, not the manager. if you replace the top manager by another one with the same policy, simply it will produce the same results. For instance, Mr. Didier Lombard has said we stop the time to move policy.
Right, suspended for 3 months.
Yes, suspended for 3 months. So we say we must suspend it for good, because simply it's a policy we don't want to see anymore.
Mr. Messner, let me just ask you, there's this reputation of French workers, especially civil servants, who enjoy lots of benefits, unemployment, health, retirement. Is this an extreme example of French workers not accepting a modern world where everything is flat and there's a strong competition, especially in the telecom industry?
Well, I think, again, the status of France Telecom has changed dramatically over the last 10 years. It's become, as Didier said, it went from being a highly protected public sector company to a highly competitive private sector company, purchasing Orange in Great Britain and going all around the world creating alliances. One of the questions to ask is, has the management of France Telecom prepared its workers for the inevitable changes that result from this change in status? And I'm not sure that as France Telecom evolves more and more toward a normal private sector company, that all has been communicated, that needs to be communicated to the employees about what their new jobs are going to be, what their new status is, and how they have to adapt themselves to exist in this new world, which is a world unlike any world they knew before under the old regime.
Mr. Ott, let me just ask you a very simple question. I mean, a lot of blame is apportioned to essentially a deaf and blind management. Are the workers to blame? Are the unions to blame? Is everything up to the management on this issue?
Well, in a way, you could charge the union, because we saw the problem months ago, and even we say to the France Telecom management, there is a problem with the suicide. Probably we should have been more adamant about do something now. For instance, calling for a strike. But there is a kind of shame about the situation, because the workers says, well, maybe it's because we are not good enough at the job, and it's very difficult to say okay, we can't stand that anymore. Let's do something, because people say, okay, but is it the proper time? Is it, well, the culture of results, in fact, makes all the workers rather isolated. Many of our colleagues in France Telecom say, we know the people, the workers who are fragile, who could take their life. In fact, we know them before, and we try to gather around them, to help them, to comfort them. But there are sometimes workers we didn't see coming in, and they made the suicide before we realized they were in danger.
Right.
So there is a responsibility of us, but not, in fact, a small one.
Small. Let me just read you quickly a testimony, one of the many that have appeared in recent days in media on the internet, from a woman who's an employee from France Telecom. She says, "I'm facing such humiliation and suffering that I don't know how long I will be able to take it. I'm well aware of the reality of repeated and orchestrated humiliations. Today I had a meeting with the person to whom my job is being given, and I am being asked to train her. If I speak out and show evidence, I will be sued. I can't live like this anymore. I am ashamed. I am nothing anymore, and I just want one thing: disappear so that it all ends." Mr. Mesnou, any reactions?
Well, I mean, that's a horrific thing to have to listen to. What I would say is, in France, as opposed to many other countries, including the United States, that there are a number of institutions in French law which exist to assist salaried employees in their moments of difficulty. We have in France work doctors, médecins du travail. We have hygiene and work condition committees. We have inspecteurs du travail, work inspectors. So there we have, of course, the comité d'entreprise, the workers' committees, and we have the unions. There are a number of tools which exist already in France, which don't exist in a lot of other countries, which probably need to be strengthened and improved in the particular case of France Telecom, to make sure that the 25th suicide, including potentially someone in this state of mind, doesn't happen.
Just a very last word, because we have to wrap it up, unfortunately. Mr. Do you agree that all the social dialogue in France needs to be repaired and improved?
Yes, particularly in France Telecom, we have a lot of talks about social dialogues, and now we must translate it. We have asked for an inquiry by a parliament committee, because I think now we must take things seriously, and I think the parliament must take it over.
Okay, thank you very much to both of you for this debate. Thank you to all our viewers for watching Face Off on France 24. See you next time.